You made my day now, me speaking to you.
Yeah, you certainly made mine, sweetheart. Keep safe.
We are a COVID hospital. All of our intensive care units are occupied by COVID-positive patients. Everyone is giving everything they can.
And I want to say it from Chelsea family, but more than that, the whole public. There's absolute thanks and admiration for everything you're doing.
Domestic abuse is on the rise.
Refuge needs our support and reach even more women
just like me.
Today for me it's a celebration. A very big club is Chelsea coming to Israel to make the people here understand that girls can play football as well as boys.
As a gay footballer myself, no one should come to a football game or no one should support a club and feel like they can't because of the stereotype, stigma and the negativity that comes with it.
Our role as a football club is one that affects a lot of lives. We have a duty of care to make sure that we are involved with the vulnerable communities, like we always are.
I've experienced anti-Semitism my whole life. I could hear the gunfire getting louder.
Targeting that synagogue.
Police stormed the Jewish supermarket at Port-de-Vence.
Anti-Semitism. 12 have gone up, shot.
4 hostages.
I never thought this would be
The human race cannot be stopped by hatred.
You can't underestimate seeing our football heroes speaking up. It really makes a phenomenal difference, and it's all credit to Chelsea Football Club.
This is one step forward towards the eradication of anti-Semitism and racism that we are suffering.
The story started 15 years ago when Mr. Abramovich bought the club. He wanted to use the force of football for good deeds.
I'm a proud player to play for Chelsea. And I think it's our duty as players, as a club, to spread this awareness.
It's terrible what's going on today. I cannot understand it. We have not learned from what had happened, so we must not give up.
I would like to welcome Bruce Buck, Chairman of Chelsea Football Club, Simon Taylor, Head of the Chelsea Foundation, and the Right Honourable Lord Mann, Member of the UK House of Lords, and the Independent Advisor to the UK Government on Anti-Semitism. Today we're going to be discussing Chelsea's charitable work, and in particular the club's response to the COVID-19 outbreak, as well as the Say No to Anti-Semitism campaign. So welcome here today.
Socially distanced, good morning.
Socially distanced, absolutely. So let's start with a little bit of background on Chelsea. So Chelsea Foundation is the largest charitable organization within the Premier League. So Bruce, could you give us a little bit of background about why this is so important to the club?
Well, I guess I have to go back to ancient history when Roman Abramovich bought the club. And I think the day after, he said to the press and he said to the people that were going to be running the club that he wanted to accomplish 3 things. One is he wanted success on the pitch in the near term. He wanted to build success on the pitch for the long term. And he also wanted to do everything he could for the community. And out of that first grew something we call the Past Players Trust, which was designed to help players mostly from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then that grew further into something we now call the Chelsea Foundation, which Simon heads.
Thank you. And Simon, can you tell us a little bit about the work of the foundation and specifically what work you do in equality and diversity?
Yeah, so the foundation's set up to use football to help motivate, to inspire and to educate. So what we do is we utilise the power and the love of the game and try and adapt it to help different communities and different individuals in their development. In terms of equality and diversity, the work has been going on for a very long time and is encapsulated now in our Building Bridges programme. So that will go into schools to deliver workshops, which is delivered specifically with the FA, to use football as an example, looking at Chelsea and looking at around the world of football, using great examples of the work that goes on, teamwork, different cultures, different communities, different religions, all working together and pulling in the same way. We celebrate that in an annual Game for Equality here at Stamford Bridge, but we wanted it to be more than players wearing a t-shirt. We wanted it to actually celebrate the work that goes in, day out, and you know, from staff training to introducing the restorative justice program for fans, to training the stewards, to working in our local communities and with fans groups. You know, the work is never ending, but is vitally important.
And another remarkable thing about Chelsea is obviously the support and the success of the women's team. So Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about how the women's team have become so successful at Chelsea, and what is the club's aims and ambitions for the team going forward?
Yeah, sure. We've had a women's team for over 10 years, and it was something that was affiliated with the club, but really wasn't part of the club. And we brought it into the club full-time 7 or 8 years ago, and we were very lucky in that we hired a woman manager, Emma Hayes, who is a superb manager and also a superb human being. And she convinced us how important it was to develop the women's game, to develop professional football, an academy for young girls. And she's really pushed us, and she was right to do that. And we look at it in the future as something that can really develop and even add to our commercial success.
And Simon, I assume that's also reflected somehow in the work the foundation does then?
Absolutely. So women's football and female football is a huge growing area, you know, not just at Chelsea but throughout the country as well. So, you know, we're actively encouraging young girls to take up the game. If you give young girls a great start in their sporting education, they're much more likely to carry it on throughout their life. So we've got young female programs, female-only programs, going up to women's walking football. So what we looked at doing was setting up a walking football team for women who perhaps haven't played the game at any great level, or perhaps haven't played the game for many years. So doing women's walking football. Yeah, so now we're going from very young girls all the way up to pensioners, with female college-specific programs. You know, it's a great area of our work and something that we're absolutely passionate about encouraging.
So let's now talk a little bit about COVID. So we just saw a video where some of the projects that Chelsea initiated during the COVID-19 outbreak were shown, including the support for NHS, the campaign against domestic abuse, but also some of the initiatives you had to help fans and staff. Bruce, what was the thinking and strategy of the club when COVID-19 was a reality, and what has been the learning so far?
Well, I think the immediate impact of COVID-19 was that Simon had to reinvent what the charity is doing and how it does it. That obviously we weren't having a bunch of 8-year-olds on the pitch being coached, but he had to find ways to engage with the community and provide help to the community where we could and where it was needed. In terms of the bigger projects, you know, as I said, we recognize our obligation to the community, and once COVID-19 hit and there was a lockdown, we had to figure out what kinds of programs we could do that would make an impact on the terrible situation that was facing this country. And we talked about it at the highest levels of the club and with Mr. Abramovich, and we came up with a couple of big ideas which you've seen in the big projects which you've seen in the video. All of which we're very proud of, and which, you know, as we come out of the problems that we've been having, we still intend to continue a lot of these projects.
And Simon, Bruce mentioned briefly that the foundation had to adapt, and I know you had to quickly adapt and introduce a wide new range of tools to be able to address the needs of children, for example, but also other charities that you work with. Can you take us through that a little bit, what you actually had to do?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing was actually, cancelling all our, face-to-face coaching delivery. But what we looked at was how we could affect the groups that we're working with, many who are vulnerable, many who need our support. So we focused on children, we focused on vulnerable groups, and particularly pensioners. In terms of children, we developed a range of online coaching activities, so using a private YouTube channel, getting our coaches to adapt their work to, so kids could do coaching in their living room or in a small garden or even in a big garden. We got 13,000 children signed up to our first virtual soccer school. We've had online lessons, so rather than our teachers going in and delivering face-to-face, we had online lessons for the kids of key workers who are obviously still at school, as well as providing a range of activities for kids who are at home as well. So we delivered daily workbooks, we delivered online lessons, all linking into the wider picture of health. Mental health was particularly important, and education as well. In terms of pensioners, we developed a range of online activities. So we developed exercise packs, which we delivered with online lessons. So pensioners had resistance bands, or were encouraged to do chair-based exercises. We delivered iPads to one of our local residents groups, so we could keep in touch with them, and again deliver exercise and mental health awareness. In terms of our walking football groups, we actually set up Zoom calls, so the walking footballers were actually doing their walking football in their living rooms or in their back gardens. We had players, particularly ex-players, dropping in and out, and really sort of encouraging the guys and creating a kind of a social aspect to our work as well, to keep people involved and keep people engaged, which we think was probably the most vital thing when pensioners are sort of during lockdown, when social isolation can be a huge problem.
One of the projects that you did was a campaign against domestic abuse, and it seems to me that that's a quite unusual topic for a football club to get involved in. So, well, both Bruce and Simon, can you tell us a little bit about why domestic abuse and why did you partner with Refuge during the outbreak?
Well, I think there were a number of stories in the paper in the early days of COVID-19 about the increase in domestic abuse. And we know about the power of football, and we know how generous our fans can be, and we thought we could provide a real value added to this problem. And we hooked up with Refuge, and we did a lot of campaigning to raise money, and we matched the money that fans and others had contributed. Our ladies team got very much involved in it in terms of promoting it. They were really very proud of what Chelsea was doing, so it was just a very good project for all of us.
And how did the fans react to the subject?
I think the fans obviously engaged. I think what football can do is highlight a topic, and highlight that topic in a very, very powerful and emotional way. Not just Chelsea fans, but raising awareness of the issues around domestic abuse, I think, are absolutely vitally important. And again, by the club matching the donations that came in, it showed just how committed we were to this programme and to the project. So working with Refuge was a huge event for us, and something that we're very proud of. But I think equally proud is the way that the fans donated to the programme. We gave fans the opportunity to donate their refunds from their season tickets towards Refuge, and I think we were overwhelmed by the support that the fans shown for that programme.
Fantastic. And John, I'm going to let you in here on the general football subject as well. So football is hugely popular in the UK. So from your perspective, what role can football play during a crisis, and what have been your observations during the COVID-19 outbreak?
Well, Chelsea has played a role, and Chelsea supporters across Europe and across the world must be very proud of their club for taking such a real and pragmatic lead. And it's a badge of honour that they'll be wearing in supporting their club. And that resonates, of course, well beyond Chelsea Football Club. But for such a big organisation playing its role and doing so quickly and effectively is a model well beyond sport and football. But as well, as long as it can be done with the safety of players and officials in mind, the football's giving the world, it's giving this country, it's giving the nation, you know, a huge morale boost. You know, people are stuck for what they are able to do. And the fact that they'd love to be able to be back in Stamford Bridge and watching games live, but even when it's on television, shouldn't underestimate the morale boost for the nation that gives. And as long as there's no risk to anyone involved, that's very, very major in this crisis.
Understood. So one of the projects that we've seen in the video is the Say No to Anti-Semitism initiative, which the club has been running now for a bit over, well, close to 3 years. Bruce, can you give us some just general background on why did you choose this campaign?
Well, I hate to be a broken record, but I think I go back to Mr. Abramovich, who suggested to the board that we should consider such a project in light of the fact that at the time, at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, there had been a lot of incidents regarding anti-Semitism in the US and France and Belgium and in the UK. And although Simon and his team had been doing a number of things regarding anti-Semitism and racism and discrimination generally, the idea was to do something very specific about anti-Semitism. And that was the genesis of the project that's been going on for 2.5 years.
Simon, how did you work with fans, players, before introducing this initiative, during the initiative, and what has the response been?
I think the first thing that we thought was the most important thing was actually to consult with Jewish organisations to actually find out what the issues were and how we could positively affect them. And I think doing it that way has given the campaign a real cutting edge to the work that we're doing. So after the consultation, we obviously sort of focused in around the education aspect, but not just educating the wider community, educating ourselves and actually educating our players and our staff. So to that end, we've had Holocaust survivors come in to speak to the players, the academy players, the men's team and the women's team players, as well as fans groups as well. We've actually developed a range of educational workshops around the issues of anti-Semitism and where hatred can lead. One of the things that I think had the biggest effect within the club was taking 150 staff and fans to Auschwitz. So I think it really helps focus the mind and puts things just into perspective about where hatred can lead and the horrors of the Holocaust, and actually seeing it at first hand, I think left a real long-lasting impact on everyone who went there. We've taken the first team out to Boston, the men's first team to Boston, to take part in a charity game that raised $4 million, all of which is going back into campaigning organisations to fight discrimination and anti-Semitism. We've taken the women's team to Israel. All these are just very small examples of what we're doing around the equality issue, but particularly focusing on the Say No to Anti-Semitism campaign, which I think now is probably industry leading.
I think it's worth pointing out that the Say No to Anti-Semitism campaign has really had really wholesome, fulsome support from our players, both men and women. And I like to tell a little story where we had a Holocaust survivor come to see the men's team one day after training in a conference room, and I didn't think the players would be all that interested and would be playing with their iPhones and looking to try to get out of the room, but there was none of that. They were mesmerized by Harry Spiro's remarks, and they just sat there for 45 minutes and then asked questions, and afterwards a lot of them were talking about, it really pointed out to them how lucky they are And a number of them said to me, how can we help with this campaign? So that was very gratifying.
And John, another quite unusual campaign for a football club to get involved in, football and anti-Semitism. Is it important for clubs to get involved, and what role can they play?
Well, the reach of football is so huge. The badge of Chelsea is so famous. Therefore, if Chelsea does something, it represents the values of the club, and you cannot underestimate the positive impact it has on the Jewish community, especially on young Jewish people in this country. The reaffirmation of their place in our country, of their rights, of their opportunities. I mean, that's huge, whether they're Chelsea fans or not. But what's really important to me is this isn't merely a PR opportunity. That would be fine if it was. It would be positive if it was. It's far beyond that. This is real stuff. This is serious stuff. And at every level in the club, from Roman Abramovich to Bruce Boak to Frank Lampard, all the way through, what I've seen is the club is committed to this. And therefore, we can have a dialogue, government can have a dialogue about how best to do it, because this is having an impact and can have an even bigger impact. The more we can improve it, the better it will be. And the open door that Chelsea's given to Jewish communal organisations and to those in government involved is testament to the fact that this is not some sideline issue. This is something the club has taken so seriously, and that in itself is a powerful message.
So John, earlier this year Chelsea became the first club, or first sports club I believe, in the entire world to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IRA, working definition on anti-Semitism. You were very involved in making this happen. Why is this significant, and why do you think clubs should be adopting this working definition?
We can't deal with a problem, and anti-Semitism is a problem, if you don't define it. And so having a clear definition, it's got lots of practical application. For example, stewards at a football match, just one of thousands of examples in the world. If they know what anti-Semitism is and what it isn't, then they can intervene as necessary. If they've not got a clue what it is, how are they expected to do their job properly? So there's a pragmatic element to it. But also, there's a message out there as well. This was the first country in the world where the government adopted the definition, the parliament adopted the definition, the first sports club in the world. So we take a bit of national pride in that, and it's spreading across the world. Other football clubs are doing the same, emulating what Chelsea is doing. I think far more will. We hope the Premier League will as well. And beyond football, other civic society institutions playing their role, I call it being normal. I think it's very normal for a football club to say, no, we're not going to have any prejudice against our employees, against our players, against our fans, any of them. That seems to me has been very normal, but this is acting on being very normal. And these little efforts to be normal, add them together, and you know, we win. And Chelsea like winning, I've noted that.
So you mentioned that other clubs have followed. Is that your objective? Would you like to see more European clubs, for example, signing on to IRA?
I'd like to see all the major clubs. I think it's important. Major clubs in Germany, in Italy, in France, as well as in the UK and beyond that, in all the other countries in Europe and beyond Europe, big sports clubs sign up. I think they have to give a good reason why they're not prepared to do so. It's got a pragmatic use for their employees, pragmatic use for their spectators and visiting spectators, and it's about their ethos and values, so why wouldn't they? Chelsea's taken a lead, others in England have followed that, there will be more in England. Let's see that across Europe as well.
And on the note of international partnership, Simon, you mentioned a trip to Boston, a trip to Israel. What role do international partnerships play in this campaign from both of your perspectives, both in your role, John, to fight anti-Semitism, but the club's campaign to try to address these issues in society?
I think on the wider equality issue, you look at the work of Plan International, who are our global charity partner, who are sort of dedicated to fighting gender inequality. You know, we've been very lucky to go and see their programs in Jordan, in Ghana, and also in Colombia, to fight you know, gender inequality, to promote, you know, children's rights, you know, in order to get better education and better healthcare. I think in terms of an international partnership in the work that we're doing around anti-Semitism, working in partnership with the ADL and the World Jewish Congress, I mean, Chelsea are more than, you know, a local football club, more than just a British football club. We've got fans around the world, and by working with experts and well-respected partners, both domestic and internationally, I think it gives a real credence to our message, and, you know, helps promote the message that, you know, the dangers of anti-Semitism, where hatred can lead, and what other sports clubs, not just Chelsea, but what other sports clubs can do in this area.
And international outlook is seen even when you walk into the stadium. There is a massive mural hanging just outside where we're sitting of 3 football players who were all sent to Auschwitz during World War II. Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about the mural and why it's there?
Yeah, we were looking to do something special for Holocaust Memorial Day, and thinking about a bunch of ideas, something that could combine football with our anti-Semitism campaign. And we came up with the idea of a mural, and then in conjunction with the artists that we selected, we picked 3 football players and their stories, their background, and what eventually happened to them. And it's a really compelling mural.
And John, is this the way to go, also to include the history of sports and the Holocaust and Jewish history?
No, fans don't know too much about the history of football. It's quite interesting how little we all knew about it, and the involvement of Jewish clubs, Jewish players, and what happened to them in the Holocaust is part of the history of football, and so it's hugely appropriate. You've got to remember, Chelsea Football Club, we're sat in here in Stamford Bridge, the heart of Chelsea Football Club, but I get the opportunity to travel all over the world. If I wander round a little village in Africa or Asia, I guarantee you one thing, there will be small children with Chelsea football shirts, with the badge on, and if Chelsea's values are shining out and they're hearing those values, that's going to influence those kids. That's the power of football. It's the power of Chelsea Football Club. It's the importance of what Mr. Abramovich, Mr. Buck, Mr. Lampard, and all of you have done here. And that's why we want to give you every support we can, because you've got a reach that governments could never have. And those little kids all over the world with their Chelsea shirts on, they prove that.
We know the power of football. We know we can get people's attention. Then our challenge is to give the right message. And hopefully that's what we're doing.
Chelsea Football Club actually has 500 million followers on social media. How do you utilize those platforms?
I think the fact that there are 500 million followers on social media gives us a real opportunity to positively influence those fans, and, you know, those fans are going to also have a positive influence on their friends and their family as well. So I think it gives us, you know, a global platform to be able to tell our values, to say what we believe in, and, you know, encourage and educate people in the world of equality.
So to wrap this up, John, what would you like to see going forward from sports teams, including from Chelsea, and what can be learned from Chelsea's campaign?
I'd like Chelsea to continue being honest in their assessment of what's succeeding in what they're doing, demonstrating, as they have done, that this isn't a PR exercise. That's so vital, and I'm confident in that. And I'd like to see other clubs, especially the leading clubs across Europe, adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, come and learn, exchange with Chelsea, swap good ideas on how to use it in your education, in your outreach to fans, your stewards training, with your officials and players. There's a lot of good practice here, and there's plenty across the world in football who could learn from Chelsea Football Club. From
our perspective, I think that we're very grateful for the support that we've gotten from the UK government, and particularly from Lord Mann, who keeps encouraging us to do more, and we will. When we started this project, it was open-ended, and we will continue it as an open-ended project. We do believe that we have moved the needle a little bit, and we'd like to continue to do that.
From my perspective, this isn't just about Chelsea doing something. I think it's about Chelsea demonstrating what can be done. So, you know, we don't want it just to be a Chelsea programme. We want to encourage other sports organisations in other countries, and we're happy to share any of the learnings that we've got from any of our campaigns, because we think they're making a real deep impact in a community and positively affecting society. So, hopefully we're setting an example, but something that we're open to and willing to share.
Perfect. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank whoever it was that arranged the weather.
It's done ever so well.
Thank you.